Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. The guests for e-policy circles 3 are tremendously important and they will have a lot to say. And it is an honor to have all four of them. I have from Erbil, Hoshyar Zebari, and I have from Beirut, Walid Joumblatt. From Washington, I have Jeffrey Feltman, and from Paris, Amir Taheri. And I am in Beirut, Raghida, Dergham. Welcome, and it's going to be a wonderful conversation today about a lot of things that matter to this region and our place in the world. I will start with Hoshyar Zebari, former Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Iraq. The floor is yours. You have 4 minutes to bring to the table what you want to, and we look forward to listening to what you have to say. Please, Mr. Zebari.
Well, Raghida, thank you for having me with this distinguished guest and leaders. And I'm very pleased to be on one of your other forum of Beirut Institute. I enjoyed the last one in Abu Dhabi. It was really a big success. And if you remember, the conclusion we had before the end of 2019, when it was held, conclusion was, what were the prospects for 2020? Politically, in geopolitics, in regards to stability in the region, the relations with Iran and the Gulf. And everybody concluded really it will get worse before it would get better. That was the conclusion we came. Nobody expected that COVID-19 will spread globally, let's say, to cover all over the world. But really those predictions were not far from the truth. Still, we see many problems, many difficulties. Iraq went through a crisis by public demonstrations since last October, and it took us nearly 5-6 months to form a new government. Finally, we did, 10 days ago. Also, we've seen a number of very significant development on Iraqi soil where the American-Iranian conflict has been taking place. The most serious development was in January when there was attacks on the American embassy in Baghdad by popular mobilization forces, and also the killing of General Qasim Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. This was the most serious development, in my view, that has taken place. And it was a clear message of deterrence that if you keep pushing your luck with us everywhere, you will be punished. And that has a big impact, in fact, in my humble assessment, on the Iranian attitudes. I think since that incident, apart from the retaliatory attacks on Ain al-Assad with some missiles, really they have taken the message that don't mess with the big power in this part of the world, and you should behave yourself. And all the signs, the indications we are getting, really they are moving toward more moderation, trying to see how this year will end. It's an election year in the United States, so try to behave themselves. They are under tremendous pressure by the American economic sanction, as you know, and also internally with the COVID-19 spread in Iran. Iran is also one of the highest country with the number of death and affected people, but maybe there is not enough transparency really here. But in terms of the future, actually, of Iraq and the region, I personally believe there is a great deal of goodwill for the new government of Mustafa al-Kazemi. He's a Shia, he is a liberal, a moderate Shia. He is not a sectarian or a politicized Shia as such, and it came through consensus. And even I believe there was some understanding between the Iranian and the American, let's say, that this could be a good candidate. I personally have been in talks with both sides to promote him, that he could be the best choice for the time being. At the beginning, the PMF, the Iranian, were seriously against him and considering him an American man in Iraq. They accused him of taking part in killing Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. But then at the end, they changed their attitude. But the war in Syria is going on still, you see. The tension in the Gulf still there. Iraq had the opportunity, but it's not stable. And we are all suffering, facing by the crash in the oil prices, by the economic hardship. And Iraq as a rentier state who depends 90% on its revenue, on oil revenue, really is facing the most serious challenge. I hope it will not be an economic or fiscal meltdown.
I hope not. I have a very quick follow-up question to you, Hoshyar Zebari, because you said that you see a direction towards moderation. So you dispute those who are saying that they see more confrontation coming between the US and Iran, despite the escalation, at least verbal escalation taking place about, how far do you come close to my ships and what standing orders are there. So that is one. And the second, very quickly, so you don't believe the news that's coming from Tehran is that they think that the government of Kadhimi is actually transitional and it's not going to last too long. Just a quick question, and then we're going to indulge in that later. Quick answer to both, please.
Yes. We have a number of indications, really. Even there has been some under-the-table talks. Jeff know these things. The exchange of detainees. I remember once I was at the State Department with Jeff Feltman and Secretary Hillary Clinton, and all of a sudden, some Iranian were released given to the Pakistani embassy. But we see something similar is taking place now.
All right. So what about the duration of the Kadhimi government? So
I think he's committed to be a transitional, really. I mean, the first act or mission Kadhimi has is to prepare for a new election. A clean, safe, transparent, monitored election. And therefore, according to the UNAMI mission prediction, how long this will take, I think they are giving it 16 months to 2 years almost, you see. Right. So more than a year to prepare the election.
Thank you very much, Hoshyar Zebari. We will go into all these details in a bit. I give the floor now to Walid Joumblatt. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raghida. I think the title of our intervention today is Stability Redefined.
Now, yes.
Start with Lebanon, if you don't mind. Well, I wonder when Lebanon was stable during the last 50 years, maybe at the time of Hoshyar, and paradoxically speaking, maybe at the time of between 1989 and 2000, at the time of the Syrian presence or occupation, call it whatever you like. Now we are on the verge of total instability, not because of Corona, because of economic disaster and our fault of our governance, which was very bad. Going to Syria, Syria is going to total instability. I remember when I met once a long time ago in 2013, I think, or 2012, Jeff Feltman and Fred Hoff at Istanbul. We had lunch, and I begged them, they were still at the administration, to give weapons, anti-aircraft weapons to the rebels. At that time, we used to have adequate, genuine rebels. Well, it did not happen. Obama then hesitated and said no, and came the hordes of Islamists and every other people. And the Syrian revolution was betrayed. Going to Iraq, I'm sorry to say, well, I hope Kurdistan will stay stable and that the two parties will always dialogue for the sake of the Kurds. I'm proud to be from a Kurdish origin. I don't know if, of course, you have a central government in Iraq, but you have also non-state entities like we do have. I mean, Hezbollah is also a non-state entity. Hamas is a non-state entity, and sometimes these non-state entities are stronger than the state. Finally, Palestine. Well, Palestine, it's finally Abu Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas did the right thing today or yesterday to accept that, well, the two states, finally to acknowledge that the two-state solution is over. And I hope that he will dissolve the so-called Palestinian Authority and accept to be under occupation, because there is no other way. There is no other way. Of course, it is total instability that will lead to an unstable Jordan. The old Zionist plan to have al-Watan al-Badil, that East Jordan could be the Palestine. This is the idea of Igal alone and Ben Gurion. This is what I'm happy to say now.
All right, very good. We're going to go into the details of the annexation plan and its impact on the region, definitely. I just want to know what, from the point of view of a politician, a man who is part of the old guard, Walid Joumblatt, you are also accused of being part of the problem. You, amongst others, when they say killun, yani killun, you are seen as someone who's part of the problem, not part of the solution. How can you make yourself part of the solution to bring stability to Lebanon?
I'm not saying that I will be part of the solution. It's up to the new generation. It's up just to the new generation. But at the same time, I mean, changing, they want to change. I mean, the rebellion wanted to change the whole system. This system is one of the most strong systems of the world. I mean, my father tried to change it, to deconfessionalize the system. He couldn't, he failed. And the whole Arab world is going to sectarian and confessions. I don't know how to change it. I have no formula. Leave it to others.
But are you for changing the system, the political and economic system in the country? Are you for it?
I'm for reforming the actual liberal system of Lebanon. Yes, drastic reforms, but not to abolish this system. We are on the eve of the 100th anniversary of the Grand Liban, created by Beirut. Now you have people inside the government and outside that would like to nationalize the banks, that would like to destroy the banks, that would like to have a new Lebanon like the Syrians did in 1963 when they abolished everything, the Ba'ath Party in 1963.
Thank you. Jeffrey Feltman, please go ahead.
Raghida, thank you very much for this invitation to join this panel. It's an honor to be among the distinguished panelists and, frankly, personal friends who you've gathered today. So thank you very much. Yeah, I know that we'll be talking mostly about the region, so I'd like to step back a bit and look sort of globally and historically. And think about the fact that there were two cataclysmic events in the 20th century, World War I and World War II. And there were two entirely different reactions by the United States and some other countries to those two cataclysmic events. After World War I, the United States basically turned its back on the world, abdicated leadership and responsibility. After World War II, the United States led the world in building the United Nations and building interlocking institutions and alliances that, yes, served US interests, but also served the interest of global stability and development. And if you think about it, it's been 75 years since there has been a global war. It doesn't mean there's been universal peace, as people in the Middle East, Lebanon, Iraq certainly know better than I do, but there's not been a war between major powers. That's something significant. Now, today, we're facing another disruption of the same magnitude, the combination of the pandemic and the economic crash. And we know the statistics. The United States now has 36 million people registered as unemployed, and that's probably an underestimation. Hoshyar, I know that I saw the statistics from Iraq that your oil revenues dropped from $6 billion in January to $1.4 billion in April. Global North, global South, rich countries, poor countries, they're all facing the same crisis. So the question is, how will national leaders today react to this disruption? What will the populations expect the national leaders to do? Is there going to be a retreat like the US after World War I? Or will there be revived efforts to strengthen the multilateral cooperation to deal with the economies, to deal with the health issues, to deal with inequality, and so forth. Rationally, the coronavirus and the economic recessions affecting everybody should reinforce this idea of cooperation, of partnership. And I've seen encouraging people talk about build back better, which basically means seize the opportunity that the crisis presents to build better institutions, to build economies that don't lead to the world being uninhabitable because of climate crisis. But frankly, Raghida, I fear that this pandemic and the economic toll are going to reinforce some quite negative trends. They'll reinforce the isolationism, the xenophobia, the inward looking, the nationalism on the part of many world leaders, including here in the United States. These factors like xenophobia and increased nationalism were already present before coronavirus hit, before the economy crashed.
Right.
But these crises seem to be reinforcing these trends.
Hmm.
And I think strongly that we need to be trying to create the innovative atmosphere and the international solidarity that's more akin to 1945 than to 1918. And the key to doing this is sustainable economic recovery. Can we use the existing institutions? Can we come together to make new mechanisms that will address the economic issues that every world leader and most of the world's citizenry are concerned about right now, to build more equal societies, more sustainable economies, and deal with things like climate change.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we have to try. I'm going to stop you here. I'm not going to follow up with you because I'm losing a lot of time that I want to use in detailed questions. I'm going to go to Amir Taheri. Your 4 minutes, please, and then I'm going to open up the discussion. Go ahead, Amir.
Yes, I understood. We want to talk about stability, as a kind of ideal. But what I observe is that, for the past at least 20 years, we haven't had the stability at all. We have had the stagnation in all the countries in the world. The international organizations have remained stagnant. They have lost their direction. The United States has been eroded in its leadership role. All in all, and because there was a lot of money and the party mood, there was no attention paid to the fundamental weaknesses of the international system and the changes that were happening. So we did not lose stability, we lost the stagnation, and what we are facing now is the management of instability, because we are going to be unstable for a while. So in the middle of this management of stability, some are talking of grand ideas. For example, in the case of Lebanon, to create a new Lebanon, or to create a new United States. I think, we have to be more modest, to pull down our vanity a little bit and look for practical solutions to many problems. There isn't time in 4 minutes to go into the details, but what I would like to see is an end to the diplomacy of gesticulation by the United States, return of the United States as the guarantor of the international order. This has not been happening for the past 10 years. The United States, whether you like them or not, is still an important player in the international scene. But when you see, this diplomacy of gesticulation specializes in mistaking rivals for enemies, competitors for foes. For example, I'm sure that, if the United States looked more carefully, there would be little or no confrontation with Russia under Putin. The Russians really crave to be taken seriously, even, as a second partner in international affairs. But, many in the US regards them as enemies. Now the casting of China in the role of the foe, of the enemy, and the yellow peril, and so on, is also, I think, wrong. All these powers, they want to be noticed on a smaller scale, just as Kim Jong-un wants to be noticed, just as Ayatollah Khamenei wants to be noticed. So what we have to look for is a longer term view, more patience, but firmness. You know, the problem has been short-termness so far. You come and do something and you think that from one election to another, you have solved the problem. From one CNN news bulletin to another CNN news bulletin, things don't work like that. Now, in our own region, the problem, fundamental problem we face is Iran's attempt at making the rest of region like itself. Either the rest of the region must become like Iran, or Iran must become like the rest of the region. I think, you know, the second option is more likely, and now that Mr. Khamenei has full control of all the levers of power, because he now controls the Islamic Majlis as well. Maybe he would be more pliable. I don't think there is going to be a military clash between Iran and the United States because neither side want it, neither side are ready for it. I don't agree with my friend Minister Zebari that Soleimani's death was a fundamental, very important thing. It's already forgotten in Iran. You know, they have set up a foundation and are distributing money as always, and I don't think it has changed fundamentally the direction of the Iranian regime's policies.
Jeff, let me take a point that was made right now. You don't have to control your, we mute for you, don't worry about that. So listen, Jeff, let me take the point by both Hoshyar Zebari and by Amir Taheri that they don't think there's going to be an American-Iranian confrontation. Would you also agree with them, and would you rule this out before the elections, or do you think the chances of some sort of a confrontation is likely before the US elections in November? Jeffrey Feltman.
Raghida, thanks. Not surprising given the wisdom of Amir and Hoshyar. I agree with them fully. I don't think either Iran or the United States has any interest in provoking war before the elections. I think that Trump knows that the American public would not welcome another military adventure by the United States in the Middle East and Gulf area right now. And I don't think Iran has its own issues to focus on. I don't think Iran wants to move in that direction. So I can't see either party moving toward war before the elections. And if Biden's elected, I think that you would see a revival of some attempts to come up with some kind of channel of communication with the Iranians. So I simply don't see war as being something Trump wants, that the Iranians want, or that if a Biden administration would want.
Okay, that's clear. Let me take this question to Walid Joumblatt, and then I would like the input of Jeffrey Feltman, because really, Jeffrey, it doesn't help that the United States is practically blessing the annexation, the Israeli annexation of the Palestinian territories further, and the West Bank in particular. And like Walid Joumblatt said, this is practically the implementation of the good old Jordan is the substitute state of Palestine. But the additional part of this is that my information coming from Iran is that this is music, or not music, this is an ammunition in the hands of the Revolutionary Guards, because they feel that right now they have legitimacy from their point of view to beef up armament to Hezbollah, to beef up, giving them all the supplies and capabilities needed, because they want Lebanon to be the country where the answer to the annexation should come from. Let me take this to Walid Joumblatt first, please. If it is in fact this decision that Lebanon should be the place where you answer to the Israeli annexation of the West Bank through Hezbollah, what is your position on that?
Let me just tell you, or answer it on my own way. There is already a war between the United States and Iran on Lebanese soil. It is an economic war. And I called Jeff Feltman, I called him just after the revolution, and I told him, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that, well, if you think that you can weaken, I mean, if an American administration think that they can weaken Hezbollah by imposing sanctions on Lebanon, Hezbollah will not be weakened. Will be, as Lebanese, as collateral damage.
Yeah.
Now, this is my opinion. This was my opinion. This is still my opinion. Now it's up to us as Lebanese government to be transparent, able to deal seriously with the IMF, with the World Bank, but this is conditioned by, of course, American approval. Second, I mean, the Iranians, a long time ago, after the failure of the Arabs, long time ago, took the banner of Palestine. Rightly or wrongly, that's something else. But they took the banner of Palestine on the soil of Lebanon, and and they had their own, let's say, legitimacy. Now, will this lead? This actual tension will lead to a war? I also don't know. But there's always possibilities. Always possibilities. Nobody knows about the aggressive character of the Israeli administration, like we used to know for decades, war after war, invasion after invasion.
What is your opinion, nevertheless, Walid Joumblatt, of using Lebanon as the springboard to answer the Israelis, to respond to the Israelis' annexation of the West Bank?
Nothing will happen here. Nothing happened even when Mr. Trump announced the annexation of Jerusalem. Then now the next phase will be the Jordan Valley. Nothing particularly happened, unfortunately. Okay, I see the danger of this famous plan, mostly on the Hashemite kingdom, and maybe displacing some Palestinians to Sinai. Egypt refused that, but I see basically Jordan in danger. This is why Jordan should be helped by what is left of the Arab world to hold economically and to hold socially.
Jeff Feltman, can you quickly address this? What do you read between the lines in the fact that there may be beefing up Hezbollah's arms so that they could, revenge of the annexation from Lebanon? Could you address this issue? And I see that Amir Taheri might want to come in on this. I see he's shaking his hand. Go ahead, quickly, Jeff, please.
I mean, Raghida, I defer to you and Walid on analysis for Hezbollah. You're both in Beirut. I don't see right now that Hezbollah would have an interest in provoking war. I can see they have an interest in provoking deterrence, an interest in provoking fear, but I don't see that they would have an interest in war. But I do agree strongly with Walid that as Lebanon becomes impoverished, while all Lebanese are hurt, Hezbollah becomes relatively stronger. Hezbollah may be hurt too, but Hezbollah becomes relatively stronger because they have other mechanisms for money. In terms of the Israeli-Palestinian issues, it seems to me that Netanyahu believes he can have both things he wants, that he can have annexation and he can have normalization with the Arab world. He can have both things. I think it's what he believes, and that the Trump administration helps him achieve both of those things. It seems to me that what the Arabs should be doing is making it clear he cannot have both those things, that the annexation makes the normalization he believes will eventually fall into his hands absolutely impossible. In order to provoke the type of debate in Israel that's not happening. There is no debate in Israel over annexation that's significant.
Nobody is stopping them. Nobody is stopping the Israelis from having that debate. I mean, come on, Jeff. I mean, they have nothing these issues forever.
But I think that they just all believe that both will happen. Normalization will happen, annexation will happen. And there should be a much stronger choice put before them to try to provoke some kind of debate.
Yeah. Amir Taheri, you wanted to say something on this. I see you shaking your head or nodding your head. So either way, I think I want to give you the floor on the issue of Hezbollah's arms and in the Israeli equation and the potential dangers for Lebanon, they coming really by instructions from Tehran. Go ahead, Amir Taheri.
The way you see Hezbollah in Lebanon is not the same as we see Hezbollah from Iran. To you in Lebanon, Hezbollah, of course, appears very big. It's a huge player. Now it's virtually in control of the country. But from Iran, it is one player among many. And don't forget that each time Mr. Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, comes to Tehran, the Iranian media says Nasrallah came, he was given an audience by Imam Khamenei and given his instructions and sent back. So, it is two different things. And I don't think Hezbollah could be treated as an entirely independent player. Of course, they have some margin of maneuver inside Lebanon, but the Islamic Republic has contacts with all other communities from the president of Lebanon downwards, and they consider Hezbollah as one of the players. Don't forget that the two wars that Hezbollah got involved in with Israel were really provoked by Iran, and the ceasefires were also negotiated by Iran quite openly. The Iranian foreign minister and the French foreign minister negotiated the first ceasefire. So, I don't think that the Islamic Republic at the moment is really looking for a fight with Israel. They have even canceled the so-called Jerusalem or Quds Day ceremonies this year for the first time in 41 years because of coronavirus, they say. But, you know, their representative in London, who is supposed to organize it, says it is because there isn't much enthusiasm from Islamic groups for this at all. So Ayatollah Khamenei is going to make his speech. He's going to say, I've found the final solution for Israel, but we don't know what it is. You know, the problem is, you know, the relationship with Iran itself, you know, not, if you like, its surrogates like Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq or Hezbollah or the Houthis in Yemen. If the Iranian problem is solved, all these surrogates will really not amount to much.
Yeah, let me take it to Hoshyar Zebari, because you mentioned Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, and which is similar to Hezbollah in Lebanon, the paramilitary forces that's really eroding the concept of sovereignty in its traditional meaning. And let me ask Hoshyar Zebari, and maybe Mr. Minister, maybe you could set up a little bit so that we can see you, because you're going up there. That's a little better. So what does it take to have full sovereignty in your country, in Iraq, and bring in the Hashd al-Sha'bi to be part of the army, which you tried and you never really succeeded? As long as Iran's grip is on Iraq, I don't think you're going to succeed. It doesn't look like it. Is this being talked about at all? Does it take, for example, a fatwa from Ayatollah Sistani, who really is the man? By his decision, there was something formed called Hashd al-Sha'bi. Hoshyar Zebari?
Yes, thank you, Raghida. First, we are honored, Walid Bey, you see, of your Kurdish origin, really. And you are our uncle. We and the Druze feel very, very close, emotionally, I don't know, culturally, but no, we follow your news all the time. And Kurdistan is safe as well at the moment, but really we are in this ship all together, you see, and then stability in the region. No region is immune from all these challenges. But I will go to your question, Raghida, about Hashd al-Sha'bi. The key challenge for Mustafa al-Kazemi new government is really to bring the Hashd al-Sha'bi under some state control, or to have some discipline. There is a legislation that made them part of the national defense system in Iraq, and but really they act outside the state, outside the army, outside the police. And there are a number of Hashd al-Sha'bi or PMF units. Those who belong to Sistani, whom recently agreed that they will be integrated into the defense ministry. And those other who are more leaning toward Iran or Iranian influence, really, those are the ones who refuse to be brought under any sort of control. So in Lebanon, you have Hezbollah. It's an organized party. It has all its machinery in business, in economy, in banking, in trade, you name it. Here we have dozens of PM, popular mobilization units, dozens of Hezbollahs, I would say, really. And so far, three governments failed to bring them under any control. Everybody thought that after the war was successfully ended against Daesh, or ISIS, that there would be another fatwa by Sistani that you've done your work. I mean, you could be disarmed, reintegrated into the security forces, and you've done your job. But that fatwa hasn't come, and I don't think it will come again, really. This is the same system the Iranian Revolution used, and Amir Taheri knows this very well, when there was the army and they established the Revolutionary Guard, because the army was not trusted by the Khomeini's regime at the time. So there was a parallel structure. Here also, we see the same thing. And this is one of the main challenges, I think. Kazemi has a mission. He has tried to, but the proof of the pudding is eating, really. I mean, we have to wait and see. I don't think it's an easy problem. These militias or these popular mobilization forces, just like Lebanon, have established a network of interest, of business, of penetration in the different part of the state, or have become part of the deep state in Iraq. So it needs really bold decisions, bold leadership in order to be able to confront them or to bring them under some control.
Absolutely. I just want, I don't want to let you off the hook quickly, but because I want to discuss the corruption aspect, both in Iraq and in Lebanon. And I just don't want to, Hoshyar Zebari, you're part of the old guard. You know, what are you willing to do to respond to these young people or older people, whatever they are, who have gone out on the streets to say, you know, enough corruption, enough the old guard? What are you, where is your personal involvement, investment in that? And make that in like 30 seconds, please, because I want to go around and speak about many different things. I just don't want to let you off the hook as if it's all others.
The protest the popular protest movement started in Beirut and in Baghdad almost simultaneously or at the same time. So there were many similarities, really. And most of the protesters in Iraq were coming from Shia towns, Shia quarters. The majority were Shia youth, I would call them. And it was a protest against the ruling regime or the system as a whole. And it has been ongoing and has been sustaining itself. It fizzled out because of the corona, but they are still alive on the street.
So you think it's going to go back? So you think there's...
So one of the key demands, actually, not of them, but even of many of other leaders, of other friends of Iraq, that there is a pandemic called corruption also in Iraq. It has to be eradicated, and no government will succeed, no government will fix the finances, the economy, unless it is fixed, it is controlled. Or we have many successful examples in fighting corruptions, really. I mean, not from advanced country, but a country like Georgia, I think was very successful in taking severe measures against this waste, this corruption, the stealing of the... In Lebanon also, actually, we have the same problem. And
So let me just stay with the issue of corruption, and it is rampant in Lebanon. Walid, Joumblatt, it's totally rampant in Lebanon. It's an intolerable economic situation. You know, basically, shouldn't you be afraid of a mob mentality? Shouldn't you be afraid that people are going to say, I've had it, and then nothing will control, and then the whole country will be mobilized into becoming a mob? I would be very afraid, not only as a decision maker if I were in your place, like a common person here, because it is really out of control. Are you afraid of that, or are you more afraid of a civil war in Lebanon? Walid Joumblatt.
I'm not afraid of a civil war in Lebanon, and the people are entitled to revolt, and now we will be faced by the revolt of hunger. But let me just go back to the non-state entities, like I mentioned before. Okay. The non-state entities are part of, let's say, the Iranian, if I may say so, empire. Okay. In Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen. We have forgotten Yemen. Okay. And answering Jeff, I mean, where is the Arab world? There is no more in Arab world. There is no more Arab world. Arab world used to exist at one time when Egypt was a major factor. Egypt was removed from the Arab world in 1979 with Camp David. Okay, now these are the good old days. Saudi Arabia, well, they have to find a way, because this is what is left of the Arab world. They have to find a way to get out of Yemen. Nobody in history conquered Yemen. Nasser failed and was defeated. The British did not stay in Yemen. So, but now we have a new power called Persia or Iran, with their non-state entities. I'm not criticizing, but I'm just noting that they are everywhere, and they profit of the failure of the so-called nation state. Lebanon was never a nation state; was a combination of sects and tribes, and this is why they can sustain more than us the hunger population, the hunger revolt, which will come. Sorry?
You are expecting a hunger revolt. I'm calling it mob mentality. And you're saying that a hunger revolt, what shape would, I mean, actually, I mean, a hunger revolt is...
It is started. Now, every party, every chief of tribe, every chief of community is trying to satisfy his own people. The government now is trying to do something. Yeah. We are expecting, theoretically speaking, for the $500 million to come from the World Bank for the most...
IMF, you mean from the IMF?
No, this is the World Bank, but it will take time. But I mean, nobody can, unless America hold the Lebanese pound on the lira like that by jailing some people. It's not the solution. The solution is major political and economic reform, which I think it's difficult for nowadays.
So you don't expect the IMF to be satisfied with Joumblatt. If there is no economic and political reform in the plan particularly submitted by the government, the IMF is expected to say sorry, but no sorry. Is this what you are thinking with Joumblatt? Please, will you correct me if this is, I read you correctly?
Some people in the government, they think that they can get 10 billion from the IMF and 10 billion from CEDAW. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. Because of Corona, I mean, now you have so many nations pledging for IMF aid, and IMF is putting conditions. We have to apply these conditions, reforms. Up till now, we are in the second session of discussion. It will take time, but time is running.
We don't have time. And we don't have time. Jeffrey Feltman, on the IMF quickly, do you think Washington would agree to anything less than full reform, or would agree to the IMF giving Lebanon money if it doesn't address the issue of Hezbollah? Because I have another question for you, but answer this one very quickly, please.
Raghida, I am concerned about the U.S. position. I don't think the U.S. has a clear policy on Lebanon right now. Sanctions are not a policy. Sanctions are a tool as part of a policy, but sanctions seem to be the only thing that the U.S. is doing actively regarding Lebanon these days. Lebanon seems to be a subset of Iran. The U.S. official attitude seems to be, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what the government does. To me, that's not good enough. I have my skepticism about whether this government would be able to muster the political support to do what it says it's going to do. But I'll give the government the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. And I think that's what Washington should be doing. It should be rallying support so that the Lebanese can see that if they take these steps, there will be support. Because right now, I agree with Walid. There's unrealistic expectations about how much the international community is going to respond, and the international community is not preparing for any kind of clear response right now. Wait and see is not good enough in my view.
Let me quote from something you've written recently, Jeffrey Feltman, and it's rather, you have a very interesting take, rather frightening, actually, if you are right. And it is, I'm taking you back to the issue of smuggling across the different points from Lebanon into Syria, which, again, this is another thing when we speak about Syria, let's try to address that. But you said that when there was an attempt to fight the smuggling at that time in 2008, you said Hezbollah demonstrated in May 2008 what it does, and then you spoke about Hezbollah seizing Beirut by force, parts of Beirut by force. This is an ominous note that you are striking here, because Hezbollah has been taking a very strong position regarding the access of goods through Syria, saying in effect that if you don't make it legal, it's going to go on. So is this what you're expecting?
Well, I raised that in the article that you refer to, Raghida, to point out the fact, to underscore my skepticism. Again, I'll give the government the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise, but I am skeptical. If in May 2008, by trying to remove Wafiq Safa from the airport, by trying to bring Hezbollah's smuggling in the airport under government control, Hezbollah decided to take over West Beirut by force, how likely is it that this government, that's backed by Hezbollah, that was created in part by Hezbollah, is going to take such measures? I'm skeptical. I hope I'm proven otherwise.
I think Walid Joumblatt wants to say something before I come back to you, Feltman, Jeff Feltman, because I want to continue the questions with you, but I think Walid Joumblatt wants to say something.
2008, there were major blunders and committed by, of course, Hezbollah, but Hezbollah did answer back to a major blunders committed by our side. And this is one day maybe we'll have a special session on what happened at that time. Now,
I'd like to hope.
Now it's just impossible, Jeff, to say theoretically, control your borders, control the harbor, etc., without the compromise with Hezbollah. It's impossible. I'm sorry, it's impossible. It's just impossible, because it's a fact that this non-state entity is side by side the Lebanese government. So either we leave the Lebanese, the Lebanese who believe in Lebanon as a collateral damage because of your policy of sanctions against Iran, or we think about how to help this part of Lebanon, not the Hezbollah.
Jeffrey Feltman, back to what you said about the sanctions, because in the same article you said something, let me quote it exactly. You said it's a profound mystery regarding Gibran Bassil and his ability, that's of course the son-in-law of Lebanon and the former foreign minister. You said it's a profound mystery regarding Bassil and his ability to remain untouched by any US sanctions, despite the personal role he plays in expanding Hezbollah's grip over Lebanon by giving the organization Christian cover and serving as a Hezbollah apologist. For a US administration as focused on Iran as this one, Bassil, especially now that he has left his ministerial post, should be an obvious target. Well, now that you have signed your name to this, who
Yes.
are you accusing in the administration of giving the cover for Bassil himself? Is it the State Department? Is it Trump? Who are you pointing fingers at?
I'm not pointing fingers.
Are you calling to have sanctions around Bassil?
I left the U.S. government in May 2012, so it's been a long time since I was inside the U.S. government. And as I said, sanctions by themselves are not a policy, but sanctions are an important tool of a policy. And if one is trying to get the Lebanese to think about Hezbollah in a more profound way, to get the Lebanese in the United States to think about what they might be doing inadvertently inadvertently in indulging Hezbollah's pretensions of trying to be a national movement rather than just a sectarian movement or an Iranian proxy, then I think they need to think about what Gibran Bassil has done, all the way back to the memorandum of understanding between the Free Patriotic Movement, the party that he represents, and Hezbollah. That Hezbollah can posture as representing the country, not just the sect or not just its own members, because of the fact that Gibran Bassil has given them the Christian cover. And so that's why I find it mysterious that given all the sanctions that the U.S. has put on those that aid and abet Hezbollah in Iran, that Gibran has somehow escaped notice.
I don't have time to follow up. I would have loved to follow up. But anyway, listen, I have got a total of 8 minutes, and so I'm going to combine the last question to each of you with, hoping that you could sneak through it, your last sort of line that you would like us to leave with. I'm going to go first to Amir Taheri. Amir Taheri, you have written that the missiles, the talk of missiles in Tehran, or these missiles are sort of obsolete missiles, you said. Hezbollah's missiles also obsolete. And what about the argument that right now the Revolutionary Guards are stronger than ever before because of the US sanctions, and that in fact they have taken over even the mullahs? You are an expert on Iran. Is that correct? Do you challenge that? And what is that state that you spoke about, the dream state that you're talking about, the nation state of Iran? Are you going to ever see it, you think? Amir Taheri, in 2 minutes. I know it's not nice and it's not fair, but go for it.
Well, before I answer that, can I say something about Walid saying that Lebanon is not a nation state? I think Lebanon is a nation state despite different communities, because there is no standard model for a nation state. If we think that the presence of different communities and religions prevent you from becoming a nation state, therefore India isn't a nation state, Russia isn't, the United States, Iran, many other countries. So there is a Libanite, there is a Lebanese-ness that makes Lebanon a nation state. And don't forget that Lebanon, although it's a newly created state, is still one of the oldest members of the United Nations, because most members of the UN were created after Lebanon. As for the missiles, in my article, I divided Iranian missiles into 3 generations. One generation, it is antiquarian, they are of archaeological interest. The others do not respond to Iran's needs in military terms. There is no time to repeat the article. And the third one have a nuisance effect. The ones in the hands of Hezbollah are the ones that have nuisance effect. Of course, they can send some rockets over Israel and so on. But in a war, what matters is the final outcome. And as we see, the Israelis are bombing Iranian bases and Hezbollah bases in Syria almost every week. Hundreds of Iranians have been killed in these airstrikes. The Iranian media reports as attacks by unidentified aircraft. Who is unidentified? It's the Israelis. So, it shows that the Islamic Republic, despite its huffing and puffing, and the slogans, is really scared of getting involved in a military clash with Israel or the United States. And Hezbollah, as I said, does not have an independent existence. Maybe on the ground it has, maybe it controls the Beirut airport and so on, but its umbilical cordon is in Tehran. And if there is a change in Tehran, Hezbollah is finished as well.
Mm. So, but quickly, yes or no, are the Revolutionary Guards in control fully, as we are told? Yes or no?
Well, it depends what you control. Iran is really in a very poor situation. There is no time to go there. The economy is in shambles. The regime has lost its popular base in the recent elections. Only 40% of people voted. So the faction led by Ayatollah Khamenei has been strengthened, but the regime as a whole has been weakened. And it happens many times. In the final end of the Soviet Union, the faction led by Yanayev and so on were strong enough to come and stage a coup. But in the end, the regime itself could not survive.
Thank you very much, Amir Taheri. Thank you so very much. Hoshyar Zebari, I got to ask you very quickly again about Syria. I'll continue from where Amir Taheri left, but I want you to address kindly Turkey's role in particular towards the Kurds in Syria. and also Iraq, Syria. Can you do that in less than 2 minutes? Would you please?
Well, I'll do my best, Rania. Turkey is playing a very adventurous policies, not only in Syria, in Iraqi Kurdistan, and Libya, in Western Libya. And really, I agree with Walid Bey that unfortunately there is no Arab world anymore or Arab regime anymore. Now the two countries who dictates the fate, the future of the region's countries of the Arabs are Turkey and Iran, unfortunately. And we felt that for many years. But Turkey has ambitions, definitely territorial ambitions in northern Syria. And Turkey is contemplating really the areas they have lost after the First World War. And Walid Beg is an expert in this history of the region. I mean, the Mosul Wilayat, Aleppo, certain part of northern Syria. I mean, they said before it was taboo, you see, to mention these things. Now it's become very, very normal. The situation in Syria is very complicated, definitely.
Yes.
And still, the big powers are the main players: Russia, the United States, Iran, Turkey, and Assad also has his own control of the Sahel, of the main population centers. But really, there is no solution for Syria. I mean, one cannot see a solution in the near future.
I'm going to leave it there. Hoshyar, Zebari, thank you so much. Jeffrey, would you please give me 1 minute, because I've got to give Walid Joumblatt too. Just a question from Alistair Burt, actually. He says, do the speakers, well, you're going to speak now on behalf of the speakers. Do you think there has been a slight pulling back on the annexation after Secretary of State Pompeo's visit and some of other remarks? Please, Jeffrey, just do it in 30 seconds.
I agree with my friend Alan. I agree with the premise behind my friend Alistair's question. I think there has been a slight pulling back. I don't think it's sufficient. I think what the Trump administration wants is more of a stronger acknowledgement from the Israelis about the eventuality of a Palestinian state in the Trump definition. I don't think in the end it's going to make that much of a difference, though. I think if Netanyahu decides to move, he will move. And Trump will have no choice but to go along, because it's elections and the evangelical base. So yes, I think there is a slight pulling back. I don't think it's sufficient.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you. And Walid Joumblatt, you've got 2 minutes to answer this question, very tough question, actually. So that you say that you support the uprising in Lebanon, but some are accusing you of paying lip service to it in that support, rather than to be seriously taking actions. And the question is, are you for early parliamentary elections? And the second question is, do you think Lebanon could be normal as long as it is in the grip of Hezbollah? Please, Walid Joumblatt.
I think early elections is a waste of time. I think now we have to see how to solve our economic problems, to try to fix up an adequate reform plan accepted by the IMF and the World Bank. Let me just say this sentence. I just don't agree with you, Amir, about the famous superiority of the Israelis. I was in Beirut during the siege of Beirut, and they are not superior, the Israeli soldiers. We chased them out. The Palestinians fought very well, and the people of the south of Lebanon, Hezbollah or Amal or others, fought very well. They can destroy, they can kill, but they cannot win. They will not win over us. Okay, now going back to Lebanon, elections with this law, with this confessional law, is useless. Are we going to be able, I mean, the new generation one day, to have a non-sectarian Lebanon, the non-sectarian Lebanon that my father fought for, well, 30 years ago? I don't know. I wish them good luck. I wish them good luck, but I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm no more speaking. Are you waiting for me?
Yes, we are waiting for you to finish.
I finished. I said, good luck. If they can change, I hope so, because it's the only way to get out of this tribal system. It was never a nation state. It was created by the French in 1920. It was, at one time, we had good old days with great leaders like Kamal Joumblatt, Camille Chamon, even Pierre Gemayel, Rachid Karami, Saad Salam. Now, the old generation died. Nobody's left. Nobody's left. We need a new system. But this Arab world, I mean, that we used to know, has been also, sorry to say, disorganized or destroyed by American policy. The invasion of Iraq in 2003, and now by the Trump's policy to allow the Israelis to annex the whole of Palestine. So you have also a new world order, different than the order of 1945, that is leading the world to chaos like Corona.
All right. Well, then I wished again I had more time to follow up with on the many things that you said, Walid Joumblatt. But I will hopefully have you all again, because we're going to go on with this e-policy circles till November, because the summit, Beirut Institute Summit in Abu Dhabi, has been rescheduled because of Corona to March 2021. You all have honored me by being with me. I appreciate your time and your input. And until we meet again, thank you all, Walid Joumblatt, Hoshyar, Zebari, Jeffrey Feltman, Amir, Taheri. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Raghida, Dergham with you until next Wednesday at the same time. We will have with us next Wednesday, and we will have David Schenker with us. We will have from Germany his counterpart, Philip Ackerman. We will have Hussam, no, not Hussam Zaki. We will have Hussam Zaki from the Secretary General of the Arab League, the Assistant Secretary General of the League of Arab States, and then we will have Ghassan Hasbani, Lebanon's former Deputy Minister. That is next week at the same time. Join us, and thank you for tuning in. Goodbye. Good day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Sorry.
Awesome. Bye.